The Lassie Talks podcast.
Hi, I'm Yvonne.
And I'm Robert.
And welcome to Lassie Talks podcast, episode 3. And today we're going to talk about mind your manners.
I always mind my manners. And
well, the question about that.
Yeah. And later on, if we got time, I will give a few tips on from the veterinary point of view on keeping your house safe from common poisons and other toxic chemicals.
Right. And also getting hold of things that they might ingest.
Oh, well, that's going to be the bit you're going to be talking about, how to stop them getting hold of them in the first place. And I will tell people some of the things that commonly cause trouble.
Okay, fine. Okay, so, we've got a large dog, haven't we?
We have a large dog, yes.
And counter surfing?
She's got a tendency.
Or she did up until now.
Yeah. Well, her nose sort of just sits at the top of the kitchen worktops, and that's where we put food.
Yeah, a Leonberger. So she,
there is a saying about Leonberger.
Wow! Enjoy the sun.
First time sun for a long time.
Yeah, and we're in our own home, and
here in sunny Kent.
Yep, and so the sun's come out, and it's spring and happy times with our dogs, isn't it?
Yeah, we're looking forward to being out and about even more with them, and they enjoy the spring weather like anybody does.
But lockdown, we've been stuck in a bit, and house manners perhaps have gone out the window.
I think house manners is so very important, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we say we've got a Leonberger called Joy, who gives a lot of joy in our lives because she is quite funny. But there is a saying in the Leonbergers, because they are big dogs, that if we can put it up there, they can get it down.
Yeah,
so
it's a bit of a joke in the breed.
Yeah. They are quite happy to jump up and increase their height. And if they stand on their back legs, they're higher than we are. So people with big dogs, take note, you've got more of a challenge. People with smaller dogs. But I do remember a time when we had a Tibetan Terrier called Lucy, who helped.
She was a card, wasn't she?
She was, naughty thing. And although she was quite small, I did find her one day trying to get the Christmas turkey off the side by standing on her very back legs, tippy toes, and with her paw trying to hoik
she was patting it off, wasn't she?
She was trying to get the plate off.
Got
on the floor, it would have been hers. But
it
just shows you
one time she got on a chair.
That was.
And I found her on the dining room table.
Yeah, exactly in the middle of it.
Little
so you have to be, dogs are resourceful, are they not?
They are. And they're opportunists.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And so we can't blame them. They don't know right from wrong in that sense. But if there's something really tasty.
Although you can teach them that they are not allowed that thing unless you give them permission.
Absolutely.
I call it, in my book, the Think About It games. Yeah.
Perhaps you can expand a little on that.
I thought you were going to go blank on me there. The Think About It games are when you actually show them that, they can't have anything unless you give them permission to. And it's quite simple. You start off with a handful of treats. You show them the handful of treats. They go for it. You hold, you fist your hand over the treats. And when they back away, you give them a treat. Okay? And then you can transfer that game to floor. And this is where I talk about brain games in my book, where you put the food on the floor and you cage it with your hand. And you want the dog to back away. And then you can flick the food. And it's fun for them. And so they start to realise, and you don't have to keep bugging them with leave it. That actually they learn that you go get it or yes, or a cue word that says they're allowed it, and then, they see your sandwich on the side, but you haven't said, get it.
So they don't.
So they don't. So
Yeah.
you can actually teach, and warning folks who are listening or watching, this is a process. It doesn't happen all at once. We actually teach our dogs every day, and it's a process that you will get there where the dogs will leave it. Now, on the interim stage where you're actually cooking, you don't want the dogs bothering you there and jumping up and trying to pinch the bits that that are dropped. I like to get them on the beds, pop on the beds, so that
And while they're there, you will intermittently reward them, I guess.
absolutely, because no dog will work without wages. Do you work without wages?
No, I much prefer to have a wage. Yes,
Yeah,
but
yeah. Yeah,
and that wage might not necessarily be cash in hand, but it might be some a good feeling I get for doing the work.
Yeah, in the dog world, it's called contra-free loading. That the research has been done that a dog will prefer to have food that it's worked for.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Than food that's readily available. So you work with that every day, and with a puppy, would start using about 60% of their food ration.
So that's more than half of their food ration.
Yep.
But you're talking about food that's dry food, the little biscuity type little thing.
You can use wet. I mean, if you do feed your dogs wet food, I use one of the Chuck It ball throwers,
That's
and
a
use
ball thrower that you'd normally put a tennis ball in and hurl away for a dog to chase it. If
and then
a
I
dog
use
likes
it.
doing that,
Yeah,
which many dogs do.
Yeah, and instead I use that for dispensers so that you don't get soggy hands, because some folks like to keep to wet food, or raw meaty bones type of diet.
And you don't want to be handling that
no.
directly.
Well, it's just soggy, but if you get your food...
But I have been along with you to some, highly respected dog trainers, and they actually put their dog treats in their own mouth and spit them out.
Oh, I know.
It's disgusting.
No, sorry, I don't go that far, but it does make the dog look at your face.
Which
is very good for competition. That's what you're working towards.
They want that head lift to focus in on you, just in case out of your mouth pops a bit of sausage or whatever.
Yes. No, sorry, I could never do that. But
there are other ways round it.
Yes,
hasten to add
to
our listeners, you don't have to be spitting your food out to your dog.
Yes. But that's why dogs lick our faces.
Oh yeah. That's the reflex.
Yes, that to get the bitch to regurgitate
the food. Yeah,
and basically, what we kept our dogs, they're like juveniles, aren't they? Still, that's in the evolutionary history of a dog, that we've kept our dog in the juvenile
we've
state.
Selected for ones that stay in the sort of more juvenile state, and bred from then, and so on and so forth. Yes.
Yeah. So and going back to Mind Your Manners, there are dogs of a different breed type that are less of that juvenile. Don't you think that they're more aloof?
Yeah, they're more their own masters, perhaps, than being focused on you. And those are the ones you have to work a little bit harder to keep their focus on you, I guess.
Yeah. And I mean, I talk about wolf types in my book, and the history and the evolution of a dog. There has been a fashion to actually get a wolf hybrid. What do you think about that?
Wolves are a completely different kettle of fish, and it's the unpredictability which you then hybridize with your dog, and unfortunately your mindset might be, well, this is just an ordinary dog, but of course there is just that worry. Fortunately in the UK, this is something that's not not allowed, and perhaps has not become some
But
issue. But
some
you know, I
fair
know
dog
in other
breeds
countries it
are a
can be.
little bit more tendency, and not that I'm saying dogs actually. Now that's controversial.
Oh well,
Where
where do dogs come from?
do we
Yeah.
have a wolf sitting in our living room,
Or is it a dog?
or is it a dog?
Yes.
A Coppinger, Raymond Coppinger.
You discuss this in your book a
Yeah,
lot, don't
yeah.
you? Yeah.
He says it's they were a distinct breed of dog
Yeah.
that carved out an evolutionary niche and ate from our dumps, and then the friendlier ones got taken in and used to keep down rats, go hunting with, and it is fascinating. But our actual relationship with a dog does depend on whether we are thinking, is it a wolf
Or is it a dog?
Yeah. Now, those people who think it's a wolf are more likely to do what?
They're more likely to try and dominate it.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that, I'm sure, in great detail on and off as
Yes,
we go through our podcast.
Yes, absolutely. It's a pet subject for me, is that a dog should not be, threatened.
Yeah, I think the way we're tending to now look at a dog is part of the family unit rather than an invader.
More like parental guidance.
Yeah, yeah,
You know.
yeah. And as with modern parenting of children, taking an aversive stance with a stick, or as I had a wooden spoon, or a belt, or whatever, is not the thing that's done now.
Yeah,
and
threaten of intimidation.
Other people will argue this. People will argue it one way or the other.
Yeah, shock collars.
Well, with terrible things in my mind. People swear by them.
But you see, some people would use a shock collar to stop them from counter surfing, or even the startle reflex by having pots and pans rigged up so that it will fall down and clatter around the dog.
Yeah, but then you might start a dog off on a sound phobia, and then you've got all the problems of sound phobias.
Or they aggress further towards you.
Yep. Then they become fearful, and fearful dogs do things out of fear, and those things are not always good things. So where are we back to?
Positive inputs to the dog, positive games to help your dog. If it's doing a bad, if you like, a behavior you don't like, then give it something else to do. Brain games where they teach them, how to find a puzzle in a puzzle toy. All sorts of things can occupy your dog.
When you're thinking of brain games, as you call them, for your dog, you've also got to perhaps think of what your dog likes to do, because it's easier to get a dog trained in an area that it is naturally accomplished in. So some dogs, for instance, scent is a big... all dogs have a much better sense of smell than we do, but some dogs more than others are focused on what they can smell rather than what they can see. But some dogs, it's movement. So
it's what they see that is more important.
Exactly. So the so-called sight hounds, things like that, movement might be a better thing, whereas some of the hounds are much more focused on what they can smell. So there are a number of games that I think you've
it's
talked
fulfilling
about.
The hedonic budget for your dog.
Can you explain hedonic budget?
Okay. So the hedonic budget is a term used by COPE. As you know, I trained with COPE. And
that's a group of behaviourists with a particular philosophy on behaviour and training. Yeah.
And understanding that the dog has emotions, and that the emotions for their breed and their needs need to be met. And this is why it all goes wrong when we see dogs on the TV and we think, oh, we want that sort of dog. And then we're suddenly, like for Lassie example, when we see Lassie, we think, what, lovely dog. And then people are disappointed with their dog when they find out what a dog is really like. It's not a little human guardian angel with
or
fur,
a robot, indeed.
or with fur on.
Yeah.
It is a living, sentient being with needs. And the needs for, say, a collie type dog, Lassie, herding breed by nature. So the motor pattern for herding is there. For a gun dog, the scent is important. For the sight hound, it's the movement that's important. And these traits we've actually bred into our dogs to be useful to us.
Yes, but now as pet owners, we need to be looking at those traits and using them to their advantage in creating that
The brain game,
games. Yeah,
just right for them. For example, when you're playing with the Tuggy toy, on the end, fur is great for your hunting dog. Well, like a rabbit fur.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Or mock fur, if or you could have, for those that are like a spaniel type, that birds that they were bred to hold in their mouths, really fluffy, felty with flappy bits on it. If you like,
Yeah,
that's very technical, isn't it? Flappy bits. Well,
a bit like wings.
A bit like wings. You get toys that actually sort of mimic what they like. Find out what rocks your dog's boat.
Yeah, and
really.
even toy breeds will have a preference to certain things. They might like a softer toy, or they might not.
Yeah, but we bred
depends.
dogs, toy dogs, to really like to be on our laps, didn't we?
Yeah. It doesn't mean that they don't play, does it?
Exactly. But the thing is, because we've bred them to enjoy that close proximity, then again, when we get back to going back to work, our locked down puppy.
Here we go again.
Separation.
Separation.
Because people complain about their little dog. Little dogs tend to be more vocal. Not all little dogs. I can't make sweeping statements about breeds, but I'm going to take my glasses off. They've gone dark and nobody can see me in the sunshine. Yeah, you see me. Not all small. I don't like making sweeping statements about dogs.
No, dogs are individuals like people, aren't they? They have their own little characters. But there are, in general, certain things that dogs like to do that dogs do. Yeah. And one of which we've talked about is being opportunist and counter-serving. So perhaps we come around full circle into that. Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is, then we've got to think about making our home safe. Yeah. When we go out. And perhaps my tips... just to remind people, perhaps, that don't already know that there are certain things in our houses that are not good for dogs. Certain of our foodstuffs that we think are perfectly innocuous can be quite harmful for dogs. Perhaps a good opportunity if I just run a few. Well, I mean, everyone perhaps knows about chocolate and. It's coming up to Easter. Yeah, it's coming up to Easter when we're doing this podcast. So, remember chocolate. Now, there are different strengths of chocolate. The darker the chocolate, the more cocoa in it, the more theobromine that dogs don't tolerate very well at all. The darker the chocolate, the smaller the amount they need to eat. So when you are leaving your chocolates about, make sure they're secure from the dogs. And remember, dogs have a sweet tooth in that respect, do like to search things out. So really do make sure any cupboard or container is secure and well out of reach, as you would do with children. The other thing that perhaps is not quite so well known but can cause trouble, it's not every dog, but it can cause trouble, are the fruits of the vine. So things like currants and sultanas and things like that go into cakes. Grapes? Grapes, yes. raw grapes, or indeed, as I say, dried ones that go into cakes and things like that. Then, of course, you've got chocolate cakes and that sort of thing. And also other foods. Another common one that can cause trouble is dogs that consume an amount of onion. Now, we put onions willy-nilly and garlicky type things in large quantities into our food, and it's again something that can cause blood disorders. So it can be quite difficult for vets to get the handle on if it's not an obvious thing.
There are some houseplants as well, though.
Well, houseplants, but I'm not a great botanist, so I'm not going to give any great detail on that, but just say be very careful.
Yes, there is some good websites about some of the houseplants and how poisonous they are.
Yeah, you know me, I don't have green fingers.
I'm just going to call Joy, because I just want to point out, show people how tall she is. Joy!
Joy's in the other room, fast asleep.
And also, this is a good show, dogs who won't come to you. Come on, pop up. There's a good girl. She's a big girl. See how her counter surfing that is so easy for her to do. She's such a big girl. What a good girl. Now, just as a top tip as well, if your dog doesn't come to you in the house, it's not going to come to you when you're out and about. So teach a good recall.
Yeah,
so
I find that most important.
Should we, finish there? So I think, and we can give her one more treat, then it's safe treats, aren't they? Then they're just lovely. Right, okay. We've talked about how, to your health tip about poisonous foods. So, and top tip is to watch out for that. Look on, well, I think we'll put some resource on.
Yeah, that should go on your website.
Yeah, which is www.lassietalks.com. And don't forget to, watch out for our next podcast on Lassie Talks. And Facebook, of course, we're on Facebook. So see you next week.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Lassie Talks. If you would like to get in touch or have any questions, then please visit lassietalks.com or visit our Facebook and YouTube page. Every dog has a Lassie's heart. So remember, we need to make our homes the best place for our dogs to be. See you soon at the next episode of Lassie Talks. Lassie Talks was recorded and produced at Monkey Nut Audiobooks.